The day I saw Eliza hunched over her phone, whispering like it was some top secret mission, was the day my world started to spin sideways. Call it intuition or just plain old suspicion, but something was off. She'd snap her phone shut the second I walked in, shooting me this fake smile. It wasn't like her. So, I did what any confused, slightly paranoid husband would do. I decided to keep a hawk's eye on her. Now, I'm no tech wizard, but setting up a hidden camera in our living room? That was child's play. A tiny lens tucked away in the bookshelf, almost invisible. It felt wrong spying on my own wife. But then again, wasn't she the one keeping secrets? The first time I sat down to review the footage, my heart was thumping like a drum in a rock concert. And there she was, Eliza, all cozied up on the couch. But it wasn't her curled up with a book posture. She was talking to someone, her voice hushed, her laughs a bit too loud for a casual chat. The man on the other end of the line? A mystery. His voice was muffled, but the way she said his name, a bit too sweet, a bit too tender, it was a punch in the gut. That's when I decided to bring in the big guns. A private investigator. Sounds dramatic, right? But man, I needed answers. This pie, a guy named Rick with a face as serious as a heart attack, started tailing Eliza. I felt like a character in some cheap detective novel, waiting for updates, hands clammy, mind racing. Then Rick drops the bomb. Eliza, my Eliza, was seen laughing and dining with this unknown man at some fancy restaurant downtown. Candlelight, wine, the works. It wasn't just a one-off call. This was a full-blown affair, happening right under my nose. Sitting there with the photos Rick handed me, pictures of Eliza with this man, her hand on his, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. Who is this guy, and since when had my marriage turned into a lie? Each event, from seeing Eliza's secretive phone habits to the damning evidence from the pie, was like a piece of a puzzle I never wanted to complete. But there it was, the picture becoming clearer, uglier. My wife, the woman I trusted with my life, was in the arms of another man. And I, the clueless husband, was left piecing together the fragments of a shattered trust. The moment I laid eyes on the guy Eliza was meeting, it felt like a sucker punch. Mike, her ex, though, we're just friends guy. And there I was thinking I knew all her friends. The lies were piling up, and it was getting harder to ignore them. So I cooked up a plan. Told Eliza I was heading out of town for a business trip. Bags packed, kisses exchanged, and off I went, only to circle back and hole up in a buddy's apartment across the street. Call it deception, but I needed the truth. The very next day, there they were, Eliza and Mike, casually strolling into our house like it was the most natural thing in the world. My house, where we built our life together, now a backdrop for her secret rendezvous. Watching them laugh and chat, a part of me wanted to storm over there, but I held back. Needed more than just seeing them together. That night I confronted her. Eliza, what's going on with you and Mike? Her reaction? Classic. She laughed it off, called me paranoid, said I was seeing things. But her eyes, there was something in her eyes that wasn't sitting right with me. Then came the clincher. A few days later, an envelope lands in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, photos of Eliza and Mike. Not just hanging out, but close, intimate. The kind of photos that leave little to the imagination. My heart sank. There they were, in plain black and white, the evidence of her betrayal. Each photo was a blow to my gut. A stark, undeniable truth staring back at me. Eliza with her arms around Mike, their smiles too comfortable, too familiar. How long had this been going on? Had I been blind this whole time? I was stuck in a whirlwind of emotions. Betrayal, anger, disbelief. But underneath it all, a gnawing need to understand why. Why Eliza? Why us? Our marriage might not have been perfect, but it was ours. And she shattered it as if it meant nothing. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the images of Eliza and Mike burned into my mind. I knew things could never go back to the way they were. The trust was broken, and with it, a part of me too. I needed to face what was happening head on, but damn, was I ready for what was coming next. I never thought I'd be that guy, sitting in a lawyer's office talking divorce. But there I was, laying out the photos and videos, the proof of Eliza's betrayal. My lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Dan, scanned through everything with a poker face. We've got a strong case, he said, tapping the stack of evidence. But we need to play this smart. Meanwhile, at home, Eliza was like a ghost drifting through the house. Our conversations were just echoes of what they used to be. She'd become a master at dodging questions, her eyes always darting away from mine. I guess guilt does that to you. But the real kicker? Our friends. Suddenly they were all acting like they were in on some big secret. Whispers would stop when I entered the room, sympathetic glances thrown my way. It was like they knew, had probably known all along, and that stung more than the lies. Dan's advice was clear. Keep quiet, don't confront her yet. Let's get all our ducks in a row first. So I turned into a silent observer in my own life, collecting every shred of evidence, every whispered phone call, every late night text. The house felt colder, the silences longer. Eliza was slipping away, and part of me wanted to scream to demand answers. But I kept quiet, biding my time. I was playing a game I never wanted to be a part of, but I had to see it through. For my own peace, for closure. Every day, another piece of evidence, another lie uncovered. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion, knowing I couldn't stop it, but unable to look away. And through it all I had to act like everything was normal, smile and nod, while inside I was screaming. This was more than just a broken marriage, it was a betrayal of everything I believed in. Trust, love, loyalty, all tossed aside. I was building a case not just for the court but for myself. A case to understand why and how the person I loved most became the person I couldn't trust. When Eliza suggested a weekend getaway, out of the blue, it felt like a scene from one of those sappy romance movies she loves. Let's rekindle our relationship, she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. I agreed, curiosity piqued. Was she feeling guilty, trying to make amends? Or was it just another scene in her play of deceit? The trip was surreal. Eliza, who had been as distant as a distant star, suddenly turned into this affectionate, caring person, like the early days of our marriage. Threw me off balance. Her warm smiles, the way she'd reach for my hand, it all felt so genuine yet so staged. Part of me wanted to dive back into the illusion, to forget the lies and betrayal. But the other part screamed caution. Returning home early, I expected peace, quiet, maybe even a chance to process the whirlwind of the weekend. Instead, I found Mike, Mr. Steal Your Girl, casually strolling out of my house. Rage bubbled up, but I kept it cool. Confronting him, I demanded answers. His arrogance was like a slap in the face. She's not going to leave me, he said, smirking. The nerve of this guy standing on my porch in my world telling me I'd lost. But that wasn't the end of it. Digging deeper, I discovered a trail of financial infidelity. Eliza had been funneling money into a secret account. The numbers didn't lie. Each transaction was a breadcrumb leading to the truth. She was planning a future, all right, but it was a future without me. Sitting alone, staring at the bank statements, it all clicked. The getaway, her sudden warmth, Mike's arrogance, it was all a game and I was the pawn. Eliza wasn't just cheating on me. She was preparing to leave me, to start a new life with everything we'd built together. The realization was cold, hard, and brutal. This wasn't just about a broken heart, it was about a shattered life. Trust, once the foundation of our relationship, was now the rubble I was standing on. And from that rubble I knew I had to rebuild not just my finances but my entire sense of self. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The Eliza I knew, the Eliza I loved, she was gone. In her place was a stranger with the same face. A face that I could no longer look at with anything but betrayal and loss. Discovering Eliza's plan to ditch me for Mike after securing enough dough was like waking up to a nightmare. It wasn't just about the cheating anymore. This was a full-blown heist of my life. I felt like a clueless mark in a con artist's long game. That's when I decided to hit the gas on the divorce. My lawyer Dan was all in. Let's use everything we've got, he said, eyes sharp behind those thick glasses. Armed with the evidence of her affair and her secret financial moves, we were ready to take this battle to the courts. But Eliza, she wasn't going down without a show. The moment she sniffed out the divorce papers coming her way, she turned into a tragedy queen. To our friends, she was the victim, the poor misunderstood wife. And I watched, jaw clenched, as one after another our friends, people I'd barbecued with, watched games with, started drifting to her corner. It was like they'd forgotten who I was, or maybe they never really knew. Then came the sucker punch. Eliza, in a performance worthy of an award, accused me of being abusive. That word, coming from her, spread like wildfire. It was ludicrous, but in the court of public opinion I was already hanging. Friends, colleagues, people I'd known for years started looking at me differently. Whispers followed me around like a bad smell. I was fighting a war on two fronts now, one in the court, the other in the eyes of everyone we knew. And let me tell you, being painted as the villain in your own life story, that's a special kind of hell. Each accusation, each sympathetic look towards her, was a twist of the knife. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built a life with, was dismantling that very life piece by piece. And the worst part? I was powerless to stop the rumors, the side glances, the whispers. This chapter of my life, it wasn't just about the end of a marriage. It was about watching my world, the one I thought I knew, crumble around me. And standing in the rubble, I had to find the strength to build something new, something true. But as I braced for the next round of battles in court and outside, I couldn't shake off the feeling of betrayal. It wasn't just Eliza's betrayal. It was the betrayal of a life I thought was real. Hey everyone. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. The tidal wave of social backlash hit me harder than I could have imagined. Eliza's manipulation had turned the tables, and now I was the town pariah. People I'd known for years crossed the street to avoid me, their eyes loaded with unspoken accusations. It was like living in a bad dream, but I wasn't about to roll over. When the day came to serve Eliza the divorce papers, I felt a twinge of satisfaction seeing her blindsided expression. For once, she was the one caught off guard, her mask slipping just enough to reveal a flicker of shock. Eliza, true to form, came back swinging. She moved to freeze our joint assets, trying to strangle me financially. It was a low blow, but I was learning that when it came to Eliza, I should expect nothing less. Every bank statement, every shared investment, now a battlefield. Then came the court battle, the grand stage where our dirty laundry was aired for all to see. Standing there in that sterile room with Eliza on the other side, it felt surreal. This was where our journey together had led us, two estranged souls duking it out in front of a judge. Our cases were laid out bare. My lawyer, Dan, was a bulldog, presenting the evidence with clinical precision. The videos, the photos, the bank records, it was all there, undeniable proof of Eliza's infidelity and deceit. But Eliza wasn't down for the count. She played the victim, her voice trembling, her eyes welling up with tears. It was a performance worthy of Broadway. And the crowd, or rather the jury, seemed to buy it. I could see the doubt in their eyes, the uncertainty. Was I the villain she painted me to be? Then, to add insult to injury, Mike, Mr. Steele, your wife, took the stand. His testimony was like a knife in my back. He painted me as a controlling, overbearing husband, twisting our past arguments and disagreements into a narrative that fit Eliza's story. His words, so far from the truth, yet delivered with such conviction, made my blood boil. I sat there, fists clenched, as my character was shredded, my reputation dragged through the mud. It was clear this was no longer just about a divorce, it was a battle for my very identity. With each accusation, each sympathetic glance towards Eliza, I felt like I was being erased, replaced by this fictional monster they were creating. But I wasn't going to let the lies win. I knew who I was and I knew the truth. This was the fight of my life, not just for my assets or my pride, but for my story. And I wasn't about to let Eliza and Mike write the ending. The day my lawyer, Dan, laid out the footage and financial evidence in court, it felt like a turning point. There it was, projected for all to see, Eliza's clandestine meetings with Mike, the sneaky financial transactions. The stark reality of her betrayal illuminated in the cold, hard light of the courtroom. Eliza, seeing her secrets exposed, unraveled right there on the stand. Tears, sobs, the works. It was like watching an actor in a melodrama. Only this was real life, and the stakes were our future. Her breakdown, whether genuine or another act in her repertoire, sent ripples through the courtroom. The judge, an old guy with a face like weathered leather, watched the spectacle with a skeptic's eye. I could see him piecing the story together, the lies and the truths tangling into a messy web. His gaze lingered on the evidence, then on Eliza's theatrics, and I sensed a shift in the air. The scales, it seemed, were tipping in my favor. Just when I thought I'd seen it all, life threw in a twist. Sarah, an old friend who drifted out of our lives, resurfaced. She had heard about the messy court drama and came forward with a bombshell. Eliza had sabotaged her own relationship with Mike in the past. Sarah's revelation was like a jolt of lightning. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as she recounted her story. Apparently, Eliza and Mike's first go-around had ended with Eliza playing mind games, leaving Mike high and dry. But here they were years later, entangled once again in a web of lies and deceit. I watched as the pieces fell into place. Eliza's pattern of manipulation, her ability to twist narratives to her favor, it was all coming to light. The woman I had married, the woman I had loved, was a stranger to me now. Her true face unmasked in the most public and humiliating way. As Sarah spoke, I glanced at Eliza. Her facade had cracked, her mask slipping. The court saw her then, not as the victim she portrayed but as the architect of her own downfall. Her eyes met mine, a flicker of something, guilt, fear, realization passing between us. The judge, meanwhile, listened intently, his expression unreadable. But there was a sense, a feeling in the air that the tide was turning. The overwhelming evidence, coupled with Sarah's testimony, was painting a clear picture of Eliza's true character. Sitting there in that tense, charged atmosphere, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. Yes, the truth was coming out, but at what cost? Our marriage, once a source of happiness, was now a battleground of hurt and betrayal. The Eliza I thought I knew was gone, replaced by a woman I could barely recognize. But amidst the chaos there was a glimmer of hope, a chance for the truth to finally set the record straight. And as the judge pondered over the revelations, I braced myself for the next chapter in this twisted saga of love, lies, and loss. When the court called for a recess to dig into Sarah's claims, it felt like the first real breath of air I'd taken in months. This break was more than just a pause in the proceedings. It was a chance to uncover the full extent of Eliza's deception. During that lull, the floodgates opened. New evidence began to surface piece by piece, each one exposing more of Eliza's intricate web of lies. There were emails, texts, a trail of breadcrumbs that painted a clear picture of her manipulative tactics not just with me, but in her past relationships too. It was like watching a facade crumble, revealing the cold, hard structure beneath. As these revelations came to light, I could feel the shift in public opinion. Whispers in the courtroom corridors, the way people's eyes lingered with a new understanding. The tide was turning. Friends who had turned their backs began reaching out, their messages tinged with regret and disbelief. The community's view of me, once tarnished by Eliza's accusations, was starting to realign with the truth. Back in court, Eliza's lawyer, a slick guy who always seemed one step ahead, was now scrambling. Each new piece of evidence threw him off balance. You could see it in his posture, the way he fumbled with his papers, the way his arguments lost their earlier confidence. It was a stark contrast to the smug assurance he had displayed at the beginning of the trial. Then the court resumed, and the focus shifted squarely onto Eliza's past and her credibility. The judge, previously impartial, now eyed her with a discernible trace of skepticism. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker. Every eye fixed on Eliza as her history was laid bare for all to see. Her past relationships, her patterns of manipulation, her tendency to twist the truth to her advantage, it was all out in the open. Witness after witness corroborated the emerging picture of a woman who thrived on deception, a woman who had woven a tapestry of lies so intricate, it had almost become her reality. Sitting there, watching Eliza's world unravel, I was struck by a mix of emotions. There was relief, yes, that the truth was finally seeing the light of day. But there was also a profound sadness. The woman I had loved, the person I had shared my life with, was becoming a stranger before my eyes. As the evidence mounted, as her lawyer stumbled through his defense, it became clear that this wasn't just a trial about a failed marriage. It was a reckoning, a moment of truth for Eliza. And as the court delved deeper into her past, into the very essence of her character, I braced myself for what was to come. The end of this saga was nearing, and with it, the closure of a chapter in my life that had brought me to the highest highs and the lowest lows. The gavel came down like the final note of a long, tumultuous symphony. The judge, with a look of weary resolve, ruled in my favor. The divorce was granted, and the lion's share of our assets was coming to me. Sitting there in the courtroom, surrounded by the echoes of legal finality, I felt a wave of relief mixed with a deep, unshakable sadness. Eliza, once the center of my world, was left in the ruins of her own making. Financially, the ruling was a blow that stripped her of the comfort and security she had manipulated to secure. Socially, it was a death knell. The friends who had rallied around her, drawn in by her tales of victimhood, now saw the truth. One by one, they began to distance themselves, leaving her to stew in the aftermath of her deceit. But the most telling moment came with Mike, her partner in this whole sordid affair. In a move that reeked of cowardice, he abandoned her, claiming ignorance of her true nature. It was almost comical, watching him scramble to distance himself from the mess he had helped create. Eliza, betrayed by the very person she had risked everything for, was left to face the consequences alone. Then came the attempt at reconciliation. Eliza reached out to me, her messages a mix of apologies, pleas, and promises of change. But the words, once capable of melting my heart, now fell flat. I refused her every advance. The trust that had been the foundation of our relationship was shattered beyond repair. There was no going back, no magic words to fix what had been irreparably broken. What surprised me the most, though, was the reaction of Eliza's friends. These were people who had stood by her, defended her, even turned against me. Yet, as the truth came to light, their support waned. The dinner invites dried up, the group chats went quiet. Eliza, once the life of the party, the queen of her social circle, was now an outcast in the empire she had built on lies and manipulation. In this twisted endgame there were no winners, just broken pieces of a life we once shared. As I watched Eliza grapple with the fallout, a part of me wanted to feel triumphant, vindicated. But all I felt was a profound sense of loss. Loss for the love I once felt, for the life we built, for the person I thought I knew. The chapter of our lives that had been written in deceit and betrayal was closing, leaving behind a trail of lessons learned the hard way. As I walked out of the courtroom, stepping into the uncertain future, I knew the road ahead would be one of healing and rediscovery, a journey to find peace in the aftermath of a storm that had upended everything I once held dear. When the media got hold of our story, it spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed about Eliza, the deceitful wife, painting her as the villain in a modern-day soap opera. The news articles were relentless, each piece more sensational than the last. It was a feeding frenzy, and Eliza was the chum. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Eliza's professional life, once thriving, crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. Her job, a high-flying position at a respected firm, slipped through her fingers as the company scrambled to distance itself from the scandal. Watching from the sidelines, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. Eliza's world, both personal and professional, was imploding. Meanwhile, I turned inward, focusing on picking up the pieces of my own life. The divorce, the court battles, the public spectacle, it had taken its toll. I threw myself into work, into self-improvement, anything to keep the demons of betrayal at bay. My days were a blur of meetings and gym sessions, my nights filled with books and quiet reflection. It was a time of rebuilding, of rediscovering who I was beyond the chaos of my failed marriage. Word around town was that Eliza left, a shadow of her former self. She slipped away quietly, leaving behind the ruins of her life in search of a fresh start elsewhere. Some said she moved to a small town, others heard she went abroad. The details were murky, but the essence was clear. Eliza was gone, leaving behind a trail of lessons and regrets. As I sat in my revamped living room, the walls stripped of our shared memories, I couldn't help but reflect on the entire ordeal. It was a saga that had upended everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and honesty. The bitter taste of betrayal still lingered, but it was slowly being replaced by a newfound understanding. Trust, I realized, was the cornerstone of any relationship. Without it, love was just a house of cards, ready to tumble at the slightest breeze. Honesty, too, was non-negotiable. The lies, the deceit, the double life, they had eroded everything beautiful about our marriage, leaving behind a hollow shell. This journey, as painful as it had been, taught me invaluable lessons. It showed me the importance of communication, of being true not just to your partner, but to yourself. It highlighted the value of integrity, of standing by your principles, even when the world seems against you. Eliza's downfall was a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of deceit. But for me it was more than that. It was a wake-up call, a chance to start anew, to build a life grounded in the values I held dear. As I looked ahead, I knew the road wouldn't be easy. The scars of the past would take time to heal. The memories would fade but never fully disappear.